Hey guys, I wanted to do an update video for Strain. I know it's been long awaited. I've just been head down working really hard for the past few months, but I think it's really starting to pay off. The game is looking and functioning way better than it did if you played the demo or if you saw it around that time. I've done a total overhaul to a number of systems as well as visual areas. While making the demo and watching people play it, I learned a lot about what people like and what takes a long time to make. So now that I've gone through these adjustments, I think that I can make a solid foundational game, and then I can add things to it how I want to. This way I can make sure the basis is really good, and then I can add things to it where it feels like it's needed. This way I can get the game running sooner, and the sky's the limit when it comes to adding in cool new mechanics, story, content, or whatever else. I'm currently preparing a very early alpha of the updated game for top tier backers of the Kickstarter. I'm also starting to implement those rewards, so we'll be adding those in bit by bit as we make our progress. As feedback and updates come along, I'll be releasing the game to more and more people so that everyone who's backed the Kickstarter will get the first access to it. And that will happen before I put it into early access on Steam. I'm not sure how long each stage will take, but I am working really hard to make sure that it's really good and getting it out as soon as I can. This procedural city is now being generated in such a way where the city layout is more randomized rather than just a few shops. I also got rid of some of the more granular randomization, like the textures and the signage of each particular shop, which was limiting me on how good I could make it look as well as how well I could optimize. I've also designed it in such a way where I can basically generate a city and then make it static, or a few of them if I want, and then I can do some optimization on that and work with that in the meantime until later, where I can work out some of the hurdles that come along with a procedural city, such as dynamic nav mesh baking, dynamic static batching, dynamic occlusion culling baking. There's a few others. It's just light probes I can't do. So there's a lot of things that I need to figure out to make a procedural city, but I'm going to keep that till later because it's not a priority. But even if it's too difficult to make a performant procedural city in the way that I'm doing it, there'll at very least be I can make multiple different ones, and then you can pick which city you play the game in. So I think it will work out pretty good either way, and it means that I can keep adding more buildings, and it will just become more diverse of a city every time you play. So I think that will be really cool. The combat system's also gotten a major overhaul. The enemies now avoid you between punches, and if they get pushed up against a wall, they'll kick you back so that they don't get cornered. A lot of the bugs that were there before got ironed out, and it's starting to be really fun to fight. I'm going to be soon adding in different enemy types. We also have weapons that change stamina and distance that you can reach them with, as well as the damage that they do. So it's starting to get pretty complex, even with some fundamental updates to it. There are so many cool and fun ideas of things that I could be adding, including stuff that was recommended from Twitch chat, but I'm doing my best to keep the scope manageable and make sure that the base combat system is really solid, it's fun to play, it's easy to figure out, and bug-free. And then we can think about adding in new things as I release new versions of the game. In the meantime, it's pretty fun to mess around with.
You're making this way too easy. Come on then. Oi, you, come here. You punch like a damn.
The UI has been completely overhauled, not only by switching to Unity's new input system, but visually and most importantly by adding controller support. This was a big undertaking, but it's way easier to do it early on when I was redesigning the UX of the game than it would be later. And it opens up doors for potential console release down the road if I want to do that. It is also helpful for me because I use my wrists a lot and they can get sore, which prevents me from working. But using a oh god, I almost knocked my water over. But using a controller is less intense on my wrist than just using the mouse all day long. So it means I can actually test the game without having to think about that. And it's also just really fun to play with a controller. You can switch seamlessly between mouse and keyboard and controller, which is really cool. And if you hadn't noticed, it looks way better than before. My background in UX and UI is finally having a chance to be put to use. You may notice that with other than the enemies that the characters are not in yet. Don't worry, they're all coming back. I'm just focusing on the survival and combat flow right now before we do story. I'm planning on doing a more modular approach to the story, which means I can get a playable version together sooner and add to it as needed. The environment art has gotten a bit of attention as well. The whole thing is looking a lot closer to the vision I had in mind. We've also got lots of optimization going on, including custom LODs, static batching, occlusion culling, and other fun stuff to keep it looking pretty and running smoothly. I've set up an event system, so enemies used to be generated like they were just always going to be the bad guys, but I've switched it over so that while it's basically just enemies right now, and you just start fighting them, in the future I want it to be that there's going to be some sort of potential for resolving a solution before it gets to fighting potentially, or maybe there is no fighting, it's just conversational. So this is a new system that I put in to work with the quest, the characters, and the storyline. So right now it only accounts for combat, but in the future it will allow for more complex interactions. I almost forgot one of the biggest things I did, which is the build system. I went from just doing upgrades to a static apartment that you have to live in to being able to build a base anywhere. I built it all on a big grid system, and all the buildings I put in are now matching that grid system. Hopefully this is pretty fun. I'm enjoying it. It's kind of cool to deck out your place. I've had a few questions about how the Kickstarter will finance the whole project. The Kickstarter is only some of the financing. It's meant to act as a bit of a buffer between my savings and my earnings, and it's also an indicator for me to know if there's enough interest to continue dedicating my whole life to the project. And there was, so I will until it's done. These update videos do take a while to put together, but I do know that they're helpful, and it's kind of nice to see a summary of how far we've come. I often lose sight of the progress, being so focused on one task after the other. So I'll try to do updates like this more often. In the meantime, the best way to see what's going on is to come to the Twitch stream. I'm on every day. You're welcome to ask questions about Strain or just see where I'm at with it, or just come and hang out and co-work while we dig in and get the game done. Thank you for watching. I'm looking forward to the next update and all the cool new stuff I'll have to share with you guys then.